Naruto, the king of Yap sessions and the originator of Yap no Jutsu, aka the Talk no Jutsu. Those of us who are unfamiliar with what Talk no Jutsu is, first of all, why are you even on this video? But for those who need a refresher or a slight clarification, Talk no Jutsu is Naruto's strange ability to be able to talk his villains out of being evil. The Naruto fanbase and the anime fandom at large has dubbed it Talk no Jutsu, obviously because all of the abilities in Naruto end in no jutsu. So they figured the strongest jutsu in the series, who have been able to take out some of the strongest characters like Obito and Pain and Zabuza, and basically flip some of the most iconic villains who have been evil for such a long time through the power of a single conversation, that deserves to be dubbed some kind of title. So we dubbed it the Talk no Jutsu. Now we know in Naruto, the way the series was set up, Naruto was written to be a character who could have ended up like a villain, but because of his flat character arc, he's basically somebody who is constantly faced with opportunities to become a villain, like all of the other villains in the story, but basically sticks to his guns and sticks to his morals. And because of this, he serves as some kind of role model, so to speak, and basically shows his villains that despite their shitty circumstances, they don't have to be evil. And the narrative function of this is that it serves some type of duality between the character and villain, most notably between Naruto and Sasuke, to show the effects of trauma and pain, no pun intended, but also show that you can be the change that you want to see instead of succumbing to that evil. And I think one of the most clear examples of this would be Naruto and Gaara. The reason why I love this setup in the beginning of the series is because Naruto and Gaara are basically the same person, right? They're both tailed beasts. They're both seen as weapons by their respective villages. Naruto was made into a host for the tailed beast by his father right before he died, and because the Nine Tails had ravaged and destroyed the village, basically wreaking havoc and killing tons of people, so many people see Naruto as some kind of monster and mistreat him. His classmates want to have nothing to do with him, the adults hate him, and he's basically completely isolated. On top of that, he has no family, no parents, no loved ones, and even the person who was supposed to take care of him, Hiruzen, doesn't take care of him at all. He basically just leaves him inside of a house. In the anime, I don't know if it's in the manga though, but in the anime, even charges him rent. What the hell is that? Similarly, Gaara is somebody who is also a tailed beast. He's also seen as a weapon by his village, and he feels that no one cares for him and no one loves him, and even the person who was supposed to be closest to him tried to kill him. This sets up the interesting duality between Naruto and Gaara, just like many of Naruto's other villains, that just like Naruto, their villainy is based on their trauma. But because Naruto has basically lived through and experienced a similar life as his villains, this allows him to level with them and relate to them in such a way that nobody else can, and makes it that much easier for him to break down those walls for that villain and really show them that there is another way. That ties into the series of Naruto, the main theme of it being breaking the cycle of hatred. In case you didn't know that, I don't know why in 2024, people still think that Naruto's theme is hard work over natural talents. The theme of Naruto is breaking the cycle of hatred. But one villain who is renowned for his villainy and his evil is Don Quixote Doflamingo from the series of One Piece. And an interesting question that came up for me is that would Naruto be able to use his Talk no Jutsu on Doflamingo? Would it be effective, and would he be able to change Doflamingo? We've discussed before that a lot of Naruto's villains, and the ones who he's able to use Talk no Jutsu on to flip and basically turn them to the good side and change their mentality, are people who are victims of their circumstance. The question would be, does Doflamingo fall into the same category? And I think honestly the answer would be yes and no. The reason why I say yes is because Doflamingo was born into a corrupt world, which is the One Piece verse. In this world, there is a clear and strong dichotomy between the rich and the powerful and the poor. Celestial dragons, who are basically the elites of this universe, can basically do whatever they want and get away with it and basically live a lives of complete luxury as the aristocrats in this series. And Doflamingo was born into this world as a celestial dragon, basically grew up knowing and living a life of luxury, despite his parents being generally benevolent people and his brother Rocionante being a generally benevolent person. It's important to consider the environment that he grew up in and the people who he grew up around. Grew up around other celestial dragons who believe that doing basically whatever you want to the people who are less than you is perfectly acceptable because you were born as a celestial dragon and it is your birthright to do whatever you want to these people with no repercussion. Right off the bat, that already framed his mindset and the way that he thought as seeing people beneath him, even though his parents were not necessarily that way. The main traumatic incident of the series occurs when his father decides that he no longer wants his family to live like celestial dragons and he wants them to live among the common people because he believes that it is essentially unfair for this contrast between the way that the common people live and and the way the celestial dragons live, and he wants to go and live among the common people. Now when he arrives, things obviously don't go as planned, and the common people who are so used to celestial dragons looking down on them and treating them like absolute dirt are not having it at all. The Doflamingo family is basically forced into a small shack on the outskirts where they're basically forced to eat garbage. This unfortunately causes Don Quixote's mother to fall sick and die. As if this wasn't enough trauma for a lifetime, the town basically soon after form a mob and basically plan on lynching this family because, again, they cannot get over their hatred of celestial dragons, and rightfully so. Now, it's important to note that after all of this mistreatment, the father of the family, who was the reason why they left Mer Joie, the land of the aristocrats to begin with, tried to reach out to the celestial dragons and ask for help, and basically saying, I changed my mind, I want to come back. But they deemed him as a traitor and said, nope, you made your bed, now you have to lie in it, we're not helping. Soon after, the family is subjected to a public lynching, and right before they're about to be killed, Doflamingo is able to awaken his conqueror's haki and basically knock everybody out when he declares that he is going to kill all of them. A person named Treble, seeing this and being impressed by Don Quixote's conqueror's haki, or haki of the Supreme King, gives him a devil fruit, which is basically a fruit that gives somebody superpowers because he believes that he's chosen by heaven, and gives him a gun which Doflamingo uses to execute his father. He hopes that with this execution and bringing his father's head back to Mer Joie, they'll let him back in, but of course, they don't. Doflamingo kills his father because he blames his father for all of these things that have happened to him, and believes that if it's not for his father, his mother would still be alive and they would still be living in luxury in Mer Joie. Without boring you with too much specifics, I mean, you should go and read the series yourself. After Doflamingo is present and watches the execution of the Pirate King, Doflamingo eventually joins up with Treble and his people, where he's eventually elected the leader of their little posse, and he basically starts his era of piracy. Later on, his brother Rocinante joins him, but is secretly an informant for the Marines. Rocinante wants to bring Doflamingo's reign of terror to an end, because ever since that day he had watched them execute their father, Doflamingo had gone down a dark path, basically of ravaging, destruction, basically everything you would expect a pirate to do. And after finding out his brother was an informant, Doflamingo executes the last member of his family, shooting his brother in cold blood. So as Doflamingo continued to build his treacherous reputation, where he was stealing from, extorting, and taking money from the world government, as well as the people around him, he does his most treacherous act yet. And I think this is what really takes him from the level of your average Naruto villain, like someone like Zabuza, and really skyrockets him past somebody like even Pain, in my opinion. This is where he shows up to the land of Dressrosa and demands 10 million berries, which is the currency of that world, and tells the king if he can gather up all of that money and bring it to him, he'll leave this country alone and not bother anybody. Now, of course, Doflamingo, being the treacherous individual that he is, has no intention of keeping his word, obviously. Now, as the king is able to beg and implore his people to get the money together so he can give it away to Doflamingo, the king basically uses his soldiers to go around and ask people kindly for money, and as they gather all that money together, Doflamingo basically uses his powers and forces these soldiers to go out and basically slaughter the population. He even forces the king, against his will as he weeps, to go out and slaughter his own people. As this chaotic onslaught is going on, Doflamingo and his people show up and basically act as the heroes of the chaos that they created. But of course, the common people don't know that, and they basically hail Doflamingo as a king and as a hero, giving Doflamingo that status that he wanted all along. After basically making himself the king of Dressrosa, he uses the powers of one of his subordinates to turn anybody who opposes him into inanimate toys, which is her ability. So as you can see from what I've just explained, Doflamingo is a cruel, vicious person who is obsessed with power and control, which can be argued is partially as a result of his trauma. It's also important to note that there is a manga panel where Rocinante is talking to Law, who is another character who used to work with Doflamingo. Because Rocinante is Doflamingo's brother, he states that Doflamingo was born evil. And this can be shown in the way that Rocinante, their father, and their mother were always sort of benevolent people who never really saw themselves as superior or better than the common folk, which is why they wanted to leave Mer Joie and live among the commoners. But Doflamingo always hated and resented this idea and saw himself as deserving and better than. That being the case, I think all of these issues that occurred in Doflamingo's life and all of these traumas exacerbated and added on to an already evil character. I think this is, however, different from the characters in Naruto because we see that these characters are mainly a result of their trauma. Most of these characters weren't born evil, don't view themselves as better than, and are simply just a result of the war and trauma that they grew up. We see this with Nagato, we see this with Obito, we see this with Gaara. All of these people were young, idealistic, innocent people who were full of kindness and were full of love before their trauma. This is what I believe made them able to change. Because of the war-ravaged society that they grew up in, it appeared that there was no end, and their childlike naivete, which led them to believe that doing the right thing would pay, simply did not. However, seeing a character like Naruto, who grew up in a similar trauma, grew up with a similar situation, grew up being hated by his own people, and was still able to overcome and still have that ideal of ending that cycle of hatred and bringing peace to the world, helped shift the way they think and change their mindset. That being the case, would Naruto's Talk no Jutsu work on Doflamingo? I don't think so. And the reason why I say this is because when we look at a character like Sasuke, we look at all the trauma that Sasuke has been through and his obsession with wanting to destroy the village to get revenge on what they did to him, his clan, and his brother Itachi. Naruto has used his Talk no Jutsu so many times on Sasuke, and it didn't work until the very end of the series. How many times that despite Naruto trying to level with Sasuke, talk to Sasuke, Sasuke literally grew up with Naruto and knows everything that Naruto has been through and still was not willing to change. And even with that, we know that Sasuke is actually somebody who is full of love because we saw the way that he grew up. We saw how he loved his family, how he loved his brother. We see how at parts of the series he was even willing to just give up on his obsession with Itachi until Itachi came back to the village and basically forced Sasuke to relive that trauma. We see how Sasuke is really just an unfortunate, hurting character and really feels like he's doing what's right. Doflamingo, on the other hand, is just somebody who is obsessed with power. He doesn't do what he does because he's traumatized or because he's hurt. He doesn't have some kind of like ideology in which he believes. He's not some kind of broken hero. He's somebody who is just obsessed with power and looked down on the poor commoners, and then with that trauma exacerbated his hatred of the poor and exacerbated his obsession with being in control. Naruto's Talk no Jutsu wouldn't work on Doflamingo because Doflamingo is not like Naruto. Unlike the characters who Naruto has used his Talk no Jutsu on, Doflamingo isn't this innocent child who was corrupted by the ways of the world. He is rather a corrupted child who is further corrupted by the ways of the world, and instead of having this ideology like pain, ultimately has a good goal despite the evil means he hopes to achieve it by. Doflamingo doesn't have a good goal. He is just a bad guy through and through. With all that being said, how do you guys feel about this? Do you feel that Naruto's Talk no Jutsu would work on Doflamingo or not? I think this is a really interesting question because you could argue that Doflamingo is more a result of a circumstance, or you could argue that Doflamingo is more of a result of innate evil. And you could maybe even argue, maybe earlier on when Doflamingo was younger, before he reached his full level of depravity, maybe at that point, he could have been changed. But it all depends on your interpretations. So let me know how y'all feel about this in the comment section. And let me know which character I should look at next and see if Naruto's Talk no Jutsu would work on them. Maybe at some point in the future, I might do a if Naruto's Talk no Jutsu would work on my characters. Obligatory plug, of course, I'm working on my own manga called Rune Symbol. I already have 7 chapters out already. If you follow me on TikTok, you probably already know about it. That being said, don't forget to follow me on TikTok, which is my main platform. We already have more than 250,000 reads on the manga, and I'm just gonna keep grinding, keep working hard, and keep improving it. And I'm gonna keep a link down below for anybody who wants to check it out. And in the future, I'll have more videos talking about that. But that's all for me. Thanks for watching.